Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I have a really awesome guest. Well, we have awesome guests all the time, but our guest today is a self-described former racist. Very, very interesting. We really wanted to have him on to talk to him about this and so many other things that he's doing that are so interesting. So without further ado, George Sedberry Jr., thank you for being here.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Tell us about you, how you grew up, and how did you, this is a lot, how did you start walking 3,000 miles across the country?
Okay, I'll give it to you in small segments, so I know you'll interrupt me and have questions. I was the proud bouncing baby boy of George Sedberry Sr. I was born on his 28th birthday. I was given his name, and we have the same color eyes. I am my daddy through and through. He was a truck driver, a Navy veteran in Vietnam. I had a stay-at-home mom, two sisters. Grew up in, what most people consider, I guess, average childhood. Had a lot of trauma in my childhood. My dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. I had meningitis, spinal meningitis, and then our house burned down. All within I was in the hospital with meningitis while my house burned down, while my dad was undergoing treatment for brain cancer. So that was at 15. And on a tangent, that's the worst day I'll ever have. So I don't have bad days anymore. And it took me till about 40 years old to realize that I'm way past my worst day in life. You can't take anything from me that couldn't have been taken. I had no family, no kids, and I'm ex-con. So what are you going to take from me? So I'm unburdened. I don't have bad days. I have difficult ones, but I never have bad ones. So anyway, grew up, went to college. I've always been very, very book smart, but a little dense when it comes to the way of the world. I came along way later in life to get street smarts. I mean, I was so slow developing in that. But I was one of those really, really brainiac kids, but I'm also a very huge guy. I've been bigger than most people my entire life. And that was an odd combination to have. And I realized growing up with the childhood I did with a parent the way that she was, I learned to tell stories to survive my childhood because there's a lot of trauma there. And I didn't realize later on, God kind of put me through that to help me become a master storyteller. And I wear that title proudly because we can all look back on experiences in life, right? Then you can see how they fit into what we do now. But having said, I went to college. My dad and I, we bought a moving company. It was very successful. We had a great time. We about killed each other, but I treasure working with my dad. And then I went on about my career, and I was in the radio business. I was in the mortgage business. I was successful in both, but I was just meandering along. My life had no purpose. I've been married once, divorced, have no kids. And I know the part you're wanting to get to, but we'll come back to that. I know exactly where you're going.
Take your time.
But in 2001, I got a splinter in my finger. Now, I didn't realize this until I told a buddy of mine. He was like, "You're telling me that splinter changed your life. Let me tell you how." Because I'm very open about the fact I grew up racist, and that's a separate subject to go back to. But I got that splinter in my finger in 2001, and what that did is it created a bacterial infection right here in my arm, and it swelled up way bigger than my bicep. I have big biceps, so it swelled up, and they kept giving me pain pills, antibiotics. And I finally had to go to the emergency room, and orthopedic surgeon's like, "You're going to lose your arm if we don't cut it now." So I remember I was high as a kite. My parents rushed to the hospital in Dallas. They lived in Little Rock. They told me there's a good chance I was going to wake up without my arm. Okay. We're not really going off here. Back in 1986, when my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer, when my house burned down, he had to have radiation treatments. They drew these big targets on his head. I'd be pushing him through the hospital. People would stare, and I just told him he just had a lobotomy, right? Because he's out of it, and he wouldn't know. Yeah, he remembered that. So when I woke up after that surgery, I'm laying there, and I'm real stiff, and I'm kind of looking around, and I'm wanting to see if my arm is there, but I'm scared to look. And I look at my dad at the foot of my bed. He goes, "I'm sorry, son." And my mom hits him and goes, "Would you stop messing with him?"
That's what you get for saying your dad had a lobotomy.
Yeah. By the way, remember he was diagnosed in 86. This is 2001.
Oh my gosh.
He had brain cancer 3 times, colon cancer, stage 4 melanoma. 25 years. Yeah.
Oh,
He's one of the longest living people ever with that type of glioblastoma, and to have it 3 times. Yeah, it was a walking miracle. So long story short, after I got to the hospital, they gave me 600 hydrocodone, and I took them religiously. This was a big deal. I had to wear a machine for months on my arm to get the bacteria out of my body. But they gave me all these pain pills, and I took them like a good boy. Nobody told me what would happen when I stopped taking them.
oh,
Yep.
And the withdrawals. But so I started a 10-year downward spiral, and it led me to prison. I became a jewelry thief. I was caught, sentenced to 13 years in prison. They made an example out of me for residential burglary, 13 years.
wow.
So I ended up doing 3. When I was in prison in diagnostics, I spent 28 days into a concrete block room by myself. Out my window, I saw another wall, and outside my door, I saw a door. And I was at the end of this massive tier, and they would come on one end and holler information, and it's just rolling echoes. So I was cut off from communication. We had no Bible. We had nothing, except we eventually got pad and paper. So in my mind, I started imagining walking. I started trying to think of outside the prison or my hometown. Anywhere I knew, I walked. And when I ran out of area that I knew, I just started making it up. I made people that I met, I would have fantasy conversations because I felt my own reality slipping. Now, see, the lights never went off in this cell. Never, because someone was on suicide watch. So
Oh,
we were never in the dark. They served us breakfast at 2:30 in the morning. They kept it about 65 degrees. And I was wearing a size 10 onesie jumpsuit with a crotch at my belly button. Like, it was horrible. And we got out for 2-3 minute showers a week. Try that for a month, living in a box. I was losing my mind. So that became my coping mechanism. And later in prison, when things got really stressful, that became how I coped. I could withdraw. It wasn't until I got out, this was in 2022, I watched a documentary called Roll With Me about a guy wheelchaired across America, paralyzed from the waist or chest down, just been sober 9 months. And it was so moving to me. And the next day at Walmart, I made a set of twin brothers who are currently walking across the country. And I was like, okay, God, you're telling me something. Like, everything came flooding back. And I remember telling my employer, I'm going to do this. And I was going to do it last year, but I didn't have my why. And this year I figured out my why. It was HBCUs and Black history. So that's how it came about.
wow.
So for our listeners, what is a HBCU?
Historically Black college or university, which were founded prior to the Civil Rights Act. There are currently 101 open, and these primarily serve the educational needs of Black Americans, but not exclusively. All HBCUs have been 100% open to all races since their inception. The only academic institution group in this country to do so.
And why would white George talk about Black colleges and universities?
Couple of reasons. Selfishly, I'm an aha kind of guy. Like, I want to tell you something, and you go, what? That's what I love to do. Second, I love history, and I love the underdogs and hidden stories. And I realize Black American history is, no one tells it. Nobody talks about it in my community.
Nope. Nobody talks about it anywhere.
And we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking on these electronic devices without Black Americans.
Yep.
I mean, I can start breaking it down for you. All the processes, GPS, 3D, the computer screen, the gigahertz computer chip, digital wireless networks are all Black Americans. You know, like, none of this would happen without it. So you see how I get excited, because I want people to just be like, what? I don't know how we fix the problem of racism in this country, but if we can start to see people on a more human level, and we can start to see each other as equals, not, I'm not getting into equity of outcome or equals. It's just, if we could see each other, that we have the same value that way, then maybe that will start to minimize some of the prejudice and biases we carry.
Yeah.
So that's my hope.
What was it that changed you from racist to not racist?
Can we talk about how I became racist?
Yeah.
Okay,
Throw it all in there, man. Throw it all in.
You're going to ask that.
We want to hear all of it.
Okay, racism is basically going to be environmental and hereditary. Okay, it's not genetic, but it is hereditary because it's usually taught to you by your parents, and they were taught by their parents. So that becomes hereditary. But it's also environmental because, you know, you're being taught these things, these biases, these stereotypes. That's the big thing. And it's normalized. People are minimized. Literally, the Black American race value is minimized. And you get so used to this conditioning that you don't know there's another way to think. And then you start to make friends who think like you, because now we share the same secret. We can use the N-word around each other. We know we're not offending each other. So it's just this constant echo chamber, right? And for me, it wasn't a hate-filled thing. It wasn't like I hated black people. It's if I lived in my neighborhood and I had a bunch of cars up on cinder blocks, right? And I hadn't
Mhm.
mowed the yard, but Raquel, you and your family moved in down the street. I'm blaming you for the low property value, not the
Right.
fact that I'm white trash.
Right.
I don't have to be accountable if I can look down on you and feel better about my own misery. That's
Mhm.
what racism looked like for me. But I had a thought the other day. This is the first time I want to share it publicly ever. I'll probably do a video on it. And I know you're probably, and please no disrespect intended. So I don't want this to offend, but when we were kids in the car, you would see a Black American family crossing the street, and somebody would tell you how many points there were if you hit them. 10 points, 20 points, that's 50
Yeah.
points. Okay, you understand where I'm going.
I do.
And I remember thinking at the time that was a silly game. Now, with retrospect, I realized that was the very act of devaluing a human life. And it was being
Mhm.
normalized to me as a small kid when I'm so innocent and just a sponge. You know, people don't realize this, the tiniest little things carry forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of what it looked like for me.
Mhm.
Now, how did I want to get away from it? Second of all, I knew I was a racist always. I was never in denial that I was a racist. And when I got to my mid 20s, probably late 20s, became a real man and could think for myself. Now that's on me that I
Mhm.
didn't figure it out. It took me another 12 years to figure it out. I take full responsibility. And I was raised in church, and I loved my church growing up, but nobody ever talked about Christianity and racism and morality.
Mm.
Because it hit me in prison that I can't be a Christian and I can't say I serve God and be racist. I'm a fake Christian. And I
Mhm.
had been for all my life until that point. That sucked to figure that out.
Mhm.
So it's when I got to prison, my first cellmate was a gentleman named Larry, a Black American guy. I cannot remember his last name. It begins with a W. I'd love to connect with him. Larry grew up 20 minutes from me in a completely different world, in a war zone. And we were in the cell. We were locked down 23-1. And then one day he goes, "Hey, man, are you racist?" "Yeah, pretty much." He goes, "Can I ask you some questions?" We had nothing better to do. So we started talking. And he asked me some hard questions, and I didn't hold back. I just let him know and he was very patient with me. And then I got to ask him what it was like to be a Black man in America. Not knowing that conversation, what I'm getting back, would change my life.
Mm.
Because we talked for 2 weeks, man. We became like brothers. You know, we're vulnerable to each other. And I trusted it with what I was being and I realized I was okay telling this stuff to somebody, that I wasn't going to be harshly judged. He was listening. And then I started making other friends, other Black, different races. I hung around a lot of Hispanics, and I began to get out of my perception into their perspective. And that conversation with Larry was a catalyst that I didn't know it at the time was opening my heart and mind, because when I stepped out of those prison doors, the world no longer looked the same to me. It wasn't through
Mm.
rose-colored glasses, man. I was in there with murderers and rape, and just the worst of the worst in the world they came up in. That's how I see the world in the law enforcement, the media. And it just tore my heart up. And I didn't know what to do about it, but I knew something had to be done. And that's when I really started fighting my own subconscious bias and breaking my thought processes down. And I started to interact with Black Americans a lot more. I paroled out to a neighborhood where I was one of only 3 white houses in the entire neighborhood. They loved me. I mean, I had the best time there. I will tell you this, for 4 straight months coming home from work, I always turned the corner and there's always these 2 older Black women out front. I would wave every day and they would not wave at me. For 4 months, and then one day they both waved, and they have never stopped waving. It'll be 7 months before I go back down that street to see my uncle and they wave. Like, now I've earned their wave.
Mhm.
But God put me in this place to save my life, to open my mind, to pull the veil back. I paroled out to a world far different than I came from. And I just honestly believe I had to go through all this and see it in the order that I saw it to understand what was going on around me, growing up
Mm.
the way I did.
Yeah.
That's a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, no, please do not apologize, because that's an amazing story. Plus, we like long answers. It's good. We get to know people. I want to applaud you for being so candid about your story, for being so vulnerable at that time, and being open to actually listening to Larry. I mean, you guys were actually having the conversation. You guys weren't just trying to like say what you needed to say to try to change the other person's mind and just wait until it was your turn to talk. Like, you guys were actually having the real conversation, and that it's incredibly difficult to do, but you did it. From seeing your posts on Instagram and TikTok, it seems to me that you're still doing the work, that
Can't
you
stop.
continue the process. Yeah. And so I just want to applaud you for that, because that's partly why Jennifer and I started the podcast, is to have the difficult conversations and to show that you can have them and not die. It won't kill you.
I say this, and I need to start saying it louder. On my tombstone, literally needs to say, Black America healed my racist heart.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have been shown so much mercy and grace and love for being honest, or being I hate the word honesty. People abuse that word. For being as transparent as I humanly can be. I have been embraced and accepted because I'm willing to admit the flaws in my character, my mistakes, what I did wrong, and how I want to do better. And I think that's the secret sauce to life in general, even outside of a racial discussion. You know, when you screw up, that's the key. You know, I'm going to say this about racism too. And Jennifer, I'd love your take on this, especially since we look alike. I am an expert on racism from the oppressor side. Okay. We have a lot of conversation from people who are on the oppressed side. Then we have a lot of conversation from people in the middle who say they've never been racist. And I want to believe them. Okay, I'm not discounting it, but people who sign up for that I've never been racist camp, they have their perspective. Okay. But nobody talks about it from my side. When's the last time you seen a group of white guys on a panel saying we all grew up racist and this is what we did, and this is how we talked, and this is what we thought, and our jokes? When's the last time you ever saw that?
Never.
That I'm assuming you didn't grow up racist, right, Jennifer?
Well, my family is really interesting. Raquel and I have talked about this a few times. My parents were both, my mother and father met in college, and they both were actively being anti-racist, coming from racist families. So I was raised in neighborhoods that were on purpose biracial. My mom bought me black baby doll, white baby doll, played with them together. But I had grandparents and aunts and uncles who were verbally racist when I was around them. There were things that weren't said in my household, but were said around our greater extended family. So I did have an idea of racism growing up and what it meant, partly because my mom talked about it all the time. I was first generation of family trying to pull away from those values. So I was blessed in that regard. Was it perfect? No. And I believe that I still have a lot of biases and racism that I need to overcome in my own life as well. Things that I probably would have said didn't exist a few years back, but Raquel and I have been doing this podcast for 3 years now. We've read a lot of books. We've learned a lot. And I've been able to see that I had some things that I was unaware of. Yes, I believe we all have some biases, racism, but I also think that these conversations are one of the ways that we can change that, hopefully. I appreciate the question. I am very curious. What was your cellmate's name? Larry? Was it Larry?
Larry.
What was the first thing Larry asked you? And if you can't remember that, what was the most striking thing he asked you that really got your mind churning?
Ooh, great
I don't think it was something he asked me. It's something he told me. And I'll never forget this. He goes, your grandmother doesn't hate me. He goes, your grandmother probably loved me. And I'm like, you know, Larry, you're probably right. You're a cool dude. He goes, your grandmother doesn't hate Black people. She doesn't understand Black culture, and she fears what she does not understand and will not try to understand. She goes, that's all it is. He broke racism down for me to somebody who was, you know, had that mentality. He broke it down in a way I'd never heard it before. You know, I started to see it differently. I started to categorize it different. I started to see it differently in people. And I started, because my grandmother, God love her, she had some Black people she adored. Adored. Like, it's, you know, but you know that mentality, right? Like, one of the closest men in the world to my dad was a black man named Mr. Woodrow. And if you said the N-word in front of Mr. Woodrow, you'd eat your teeth. My dad was a brawler. But my dad would look at Mr. Woodrow and go, look at those N-words over there. Like, he didn't. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And he would do anything for that man. So again, it's when it comes to people, no. I think it becomes so much racism against that culture, and then it manifests itself against the people is what I started to learn.
Well, and also we have so much political racism built into the rhetoric that we see on the news all the time. And it's not just in this country, it's against all races. So if we can say, these people are coming for your money, these people are coming for your jobs, these people, them, if we can always put our fears and our woes and our basic unhappiness in life, anger, blame it on somebody else because of where they live, their skin color, what religion they practice. You can just, because they're female, I mean, we can.
You just made me think of something. It makes me wonder if our power grid went down, like we lost the internet, media, and all we had was each other out here, how fast racism would die. You would take a big bite out of it right off the bat, because media fans and social media, legacy media, whatever they are, I understand if you're going to say a suspect is white or black because they're missing, right? You need to be able to identify them. But why do they have to identify them? Because they'll stay black male after they're arrested in custody. They do this in 2024.
But if they don't say the race, you know it's a white person. Yeah.
Exactly.
And they never say white terrorist.
No, of course not.
No.
These labels, they matter. Words matter. I'm going to give you a history lesson real quick, okay? Henry Ford started 3 car companies. First one failed. Second one failed. It was bought by a man named Henry Leland and turned into Cadillac. Okay, Ford actually, what he started up became Cadillac. Ford Motor Company, number 3, the one we all know today, he couldn't start it without the help of a pair of brothers. And they owned a bicycle part company and an auto part company. So they gave him $3,000 cash and $7,000 in parts. That's it. Ford started with that. These 2 brothers built the company for Henry Ford. They did because they were the businessmen. So they were the men behind Ford. Well, anyway, the Model T was becoming stale, and they suggested to Henry, we need to do some updates. That made Henry so mad and so paranoid, he started screwing with the brothers. Well, the brothers were getting tired of it because Henry wasn't wanting to pay his dividends because they still owned their parts company. So they went and started their own car company. Henry found out about it and tried to cut them off from all the tens of millions of dollars in dividends. So these brothers took him to court, all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court, Jennifer, in your state, and sued, and the court ruled in these brothers' favors that Henry Ford had to pay them their dividends because Henry tried to screw these brothers so bad, okay, that he raised the prices, that he gave the workers better wages. It's to cut his profits. He shortened the work week. He did everything he could to minimize profit. He tried to tank the stock to break the brothers.
Oh, Mr.
Okay.
Ford.
Wow.
Okay, now he was so paranoid about this. What this ruling did is we still feel the effects of today, and it's still discussed in law school, is that the court defined that these public trade companies have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder, not the customer. Okay, and that's media. Do you know who these brothers were, by the way? You ever heard of Dodge?
Yeah.
The Dodge brothers. Dodge
way.
Dodge. Yeah, those are the guys who built Ford for Henry and then started their own company. Listen, they were such white trash, and I love them for it. I think they're Irish, that they wouldn't let him in the country club. So one of the brothers bought out this massive piece of land directly across the street from the rich country club and built the most gaudy looking mansion you've ever seen in Detroit to piss them off. When they couldn't be joined the symphony, they bought the symphony. And they love to drink with their employees, their factory workers. They love to party with them. They were notorious, fighting, carousing, drinking, buying drinks. Yeah. 2 Irish dudes.
Wow.
They built Ford. But how this affects media is that they are designed to tell us whatever it takes to hold our eyeballs for the longest so we stay through commercials, because the ratings justify their rates.
Right.
They do this. They employ psychologists, speech pathologists, how they use alliteration and pauses, anything they can to hold us in place. And therefore, they're doing that for the shareholder. So what they're telling us is never going to be motivated by truth, ever.
No.
And so that's a huge, long story to say if we had a power outage and lost everything, we would stop hearing that constant reinforcement and normalizing conditioning. And now we talk to each other. Because when you got to survive, nobody cares what the other person looks like. It's how can I help you and how can you help me? I trust you. Your skin color does not come into play.
Right. So speaking of not getting the truth, we all know that we don't learn very much about Black Americans in our history. We learn very little. And we all know there's more to it than just Martin Luther King Jr. and Harriet Tubman. How are you finding all of your information that you share with people? Because just putting it out there, one of the reasons that we wanted you on the show, aside from just like your amazing story, is that, you know, you're going to all of these HBCUs, you're giving all this great information about little known but very important Black Americans in history. Where are you finding all your information?
For one, I don't use Google, rarely. That's the number one thing.
Okay.
Second, I use a VPN, virtual private network, because it lets me go outside the country and you can find a lot of information. And I also do a lot of collegiate libraries, Library of Congress. I'm really good at research, but not only that, I think I'm very good at that. I can think linear, tangentially from the story, that I can find. Like I'll go so deep, I'll stumble into somebody else. Like today, I'm about to do a video tonight on Arkansas Baptist College in Little Rock, which is 4.3 miles from where I was born. Louis Johnson, he is the king of the jukebox during the 30s to the 50s. He had 4 platinum albums, million-selling albums, 4 of them between 1930 and 1950. He was a conductor, a saxophone player, but he's from Arkansas. And I didn't know that. And he attended this college, this HBCU. And anyway, he went on to this. He had some massive hits. He's inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987 as one of the biggest influences on R&B.
Wow.
Yeah, he never heard of him.
Never heard of
him. From my
him.
home state.
Wow.
He's been on a postage stamp. Yeah, like
wow.
Who is this? Louis, I think it's Louis Howard. Louis Johnson. I gotta get his last name because I just found this today. So while I'm gonna do the video on the school tonight, now I've got to make him on my list to do a video about him.
Wow.
That's just kind of how I find him.
Wow. That's interesting because you've shared a lot, which I just think is fantastic. And sometimes every once in a while I'll know some of what you share, but a lot of times I'm like, wow, I did not know that. I was not taught that in school. And with all the book bans, many people won't be taught it in schools.
No, they can't teach everything in school. Like I realize that.
No.
But I'm trying to teach people in the same way I wish I was taught. You got a question,
That's
Jennifer? You're side-eyeing me.
I was just trying to get a word in edgewise between the two of you. No, it's all good. I was still thinking about Ford because, of course, I live in Michigan. And I listened to you tell a story on Instagram today about Cadillac and how Cadillac ended up being so popular. You want to share that story quickly?
Yeah, so that second, Henry Leland bought the second failed Ford Motor Company, right? And into Cadillac, which because Detroit was founded, or I think founded 1702 by Antoine de la Mothe, which.
How do you remember
Cadillac.
This stuff?
I have an eidetic memory. So Anton de la Mothe Cadillac. So Henry Ford named the car company after the founder of Detroit. Sold it in 1919, I think, to GM. So the Great Depression hit in 1928. And from the end of 33, Cadillac lost 85% of their sales. GM board got together that on a certain day to shut Cadillac down to begin auctioning it off. And their service manager, national service manager, a white German dude named Nicholas Drystad, strolled into that meeting, barged his way in, and promised the board he could save the companies in 2 years or less. They didn't believe him. They asked how. He said, I visit Cadillac dealerships all over the country, and I see the wealthy and elite Black Americans driving Cadillacs, but we don't sell to them. They're paying the white man $300 cash on top of the price of the car to go buy it for them. He goes, I think we should open up to everybody who we sell. Cadillac said, okay. 1934, they began to market to everybody. In the Great Depression, Black Americans bought so many cars, sales went up 70% in a single year. But you have to ask yourself, at the height of the Depression, how did Black Americans have enough money to save a luxury automobile company? It's because banks didn't want their money. And when banks failed and white people lost their money, Black Americans were insulated against that.
That story is interesting for two reasons. Well, three. One, because it's Detroit. Two, because I wasn't even aware there was a time in history where a car manufacturer would refuse to sell to a certain group of people. Like, you won't sell your product. So there's a lot of our history I don't know. And then the third point about the banks and access to credit, redlining, all that stuff is so important in our history, and we don't talk about it at all. And Detroit is one of the hardest hit cities for that.
The Black America also say Pepsi right after World War II, and the most famous Harley Davidson of all time, the Easy Rider chopper, was designed by two Black American designers who were cut out of the movie and all credit for it.
Wow.
No
I'm
way.
gonna do a story on them. Yeah, they started that whole chopper craze, that whole stretch chopper. That was them that started.
No.
And then you think about some of the, not to be rude, but some of the people that are riding around on them. I love your videos where you're like, I forget how they go exactly, but you're like, are you sure you want to be a racist? Because you're gonna have to give up your Harley,
Oh yeah,
Right. You're gonna have to give up your frozen pizza.
refrigerator, ice
that
cream.
video changed my life.
Really?
You'll hear one viral video can change your life. You know,
Uh-huh.
and it when it happened, I was like, okay, this is a big video because it went not just TikTok, but other people posted on every other platform. It's done tens of millions of views. I remember I used to keep a
Uh-huh.
running total, then I just lost count.
What video
But-
is it?
When I looked the very first time, I said, if you're still committed to being a racist in this country, here are some things you can't unsee. And apparently the internet had never heard that before. And that's when I started going down all the inventions in the household.
Mhm.
So it started off a whole series. But I get this message from a guy with 15 followers on TikTok said, would you like to speak on stage at the Apollo Theater? And I'm like, is this a joke? Because, you know, I'm starting to get threats now from this video. And so anyway, I'm like, sure. Yeah, I'll tell you about that story in a sec. That happened. But then I also got a message that said, the Mark Henry, 15 followers again. And he goes, are you a wrestling fan? And I go, no, I'm a powerlifting fan. Mark Henry's the world's strongest man. He was a WWE superstar. He's in WWE. They called him Chocolate Thunder, massive black dude, longer hair. Anyway, fantastic athlete, literally one of the strongest human beings ever to live. He messages me. He texted me last Sunday going, hey, my biography is going to be an A&E tonight. So
No way.
Because we talked, you know, I texted him back going, hey, it reminded me of the story you told me about your mom. Like from that video, right?
Wow.
So
That's
the guy
big.
invited me to the Apollo, and we got to go to New York. And I haven't been to New York since 1988.
It's changed a little.
It's changed a lot. So went to New York, and I get to do all these things with Morehouse and Albany State. It's called the HBCU New York Classic. It's going to be
Nice.
September 14th this year between Howard and Morehouse.
My birthday.
Your birthday's the 14th?
Uh-huh.
Mine's the 16th.
No way.
I spoke on stage at the Apollo on the 14th last year on your birthday.
Nice.
So on your 22nd birthday, I was on stage
Yep.
last year at the Apollo.
Sorry to laugh so hard.
Smart man. Hush, Jennifer. Smart man.
Okay, so do you want to hear what happened at the Apollo?
Yes.
Okay. Before we got to the Apollo, we went down to Uncle Nearest Whiskey Distributor. You know what that is, right? We took a tour. Fantastic. I recommend anybody going. And we met a tour guide there. He wasn't even our tour guide, but my ex met him. His name is Sketch, right? And he's just a cool kid. So we're going to New York. I said, hey, I got an idea, dude. Can you come to New York? I'll take care of everything else. So when he came to New York, and I'm going out to speak on stage at the Apollo, for what I want to do, they had to get all these union to approve it. When you hear how simple it was, dealing with the Apollo was crazy. Like, it's complicated because everything's union in Harlem. So anyway, I get out there and I get to rub the stump, right?
Yeah.
And take pictures. So I'm waiting to go on, and the girl looked at me. She goes, do you want to do a cold opening? I'm like, what's a cold opening? She goes, the music's going to stop, and you're literally just going to walk out there. It's the most difficult opening to do. And I'm like, what the hell? Keep in mind, the night before, I remember I'm about to say my prayers, and I look out my hotel window, and I could see the Manhattan skyline. And I realized my first professional gig ever in my life was going to be the Apollo Theater in Harlem.
Wow.
People dream all their life to cross the Hudson River and perform. And my very first time was one of the most historic stages in American history. Like, I wasn't nervous at all. So I go out there. Remember, it's DJ Envy's there. Got to meet him beforehand. And the band EU, remember doing the sexy. They were in my dressing room.
No.
So I got to meet the whole band. Oh, yeah. Hold on. It gets better. So I walk out, the music stops, right? It's like, and you hear this collective breath go, because I'm the turd in the punch bowl. There's a few thousand Black Americans, and I'm the white shining face with HBCU behind me. They did not expect to see me come out, right? Just gasp. So I literally told them a couple of dad jokes, and I got the place rolling. And I go, everybody stop. This ain't a comedy set. It's a history lesson. Sit down. That's what I told them. And they were like, what? So for 8 minutes, I just dropped, that I grew up racist. And, I love Black history. And I just dropped history bombs on them, just bomb after bomb after bomb. I was so nervous. My mouth was dry. My leg was shaking. But I just, it's my shot. And I remember the whole time, Sketch is on stage with me with a canvas with paint pens painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never said a word about him over there. I acted like I don't even know he's there and actually forgot about it until they turned the light to give me my mark. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, there's a lady in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and her dream is to see her son perform art on stage at the Apollo. Ladies and gentlemen, meet her son, Terrell. And I went and handed the microphone and said, say hello to your mama.
No.
And I let him close the show. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
And then we auctioned that painting off, sold that night. Coming off stage, a woman came up behind me and put her hands on my shoulder. And she's like, you are amazing. And I turn around and look. I'm like, oh, shit, it's Jasmine Guy. I was like, I had a crush on you in college. I met her, Kadeem Hardison, Skip Bell. Yeah. And Kadeem, Dwayne Wayne recognized me from TikTok.
No way.
So, and by the way, we wore Uncle Nearest shirts on stage because it's never been worn before at the Apollo.
Wow.
So now I know Fawn Weaver, the CEO, because of it. That was a pretty cool night in my life.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
See, all this from being vulnerable, having the conversations, and then your life just opens up.
My life is so crazy. Like I never in a million years. I'm broke as hell because I'm doing this on GoFundMe. My cup runneth over though. My blessings are so bountiful that it's insane. Like I have got to Eddie George, the Heisman Trophy winner. I had to stalk him at Tennessee State, but I got to meet him and hang out with him for a bit. He knew who I was.
Wow.
Snoop Dogg started following me a month ago. I was like a kid on a bed bouncing up and down. I'm sending pictures, screenshots to all my buddies.
What did you do when Madness Cafe podcast called you and said, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? Did you jump on?
Did you jump on the bed?
I think I wait. Can I have another refill? I think I might have been that moment. I don't turn podcasts down. It's a chance to get my story out and have fun with people. Like I've been on the world's biggest prison podcast, and now I'm friends with the dude, Mike Tyson.
That's very cool. Wow.
I know Mike, one of his old trainers. So I'm walking through Vegas. Check this out. The former consulate to Monaco lives in Vegas. He's president of Liberace's museum, has like a private, you can rent like the classic cars, like the Cadillac, Lincolns, and he does big tours. He's going to give me a tour of Black Vegas, underground Black Vegas when I'm there. And now my guy reached out to Tyson's current trainer called Wayno. I see if I can get in to meet Tyson, maybe when I'm in Vegas.
I did not know there was such a thing as underground Black Vegas. Did you?
I did not know that.
I did not know either.
So many things I don't know. Just add that to the list.
I mean, some of the conversations I've had, I don't know how many HBCU presidents I know now and sat down and had conversations with. Most didn't know who I was, though. Most had to be told. And they'd come back, they'd see me. They were, because they're not on social media. They don't pay attention.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And sometimes I wake up and go, who I have a message from or who liked my video that was, LL Cool J liked it.
Wow.
Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq follows me on TikTok. Like Deion Sanders just popped up. I mean, I had lunch with a 4-time Super Bowl winner from the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 70s. He was the first Black American football player at Florida State, the first one ever to be drafted. He was drafted in the first round by my favorite team. Do you know how freaking cool that was?
That's amazing. Look at you. You are just glowing. I love it. I love it.
This would be a good time to ask about, you talk about on your videos all the time, it's the law of unintended consequences. What is that?
That's what I talked about Cadillac. Like, why did Black Americans have enough money to save a luxury automobile brand? White American banks, for the most part, did not want Black Americans' money. It was dirty, tainted, whatever reason, to restrict them economically. They didn't want it. So when these banks failed and white people lost all their money, the law of unintended consequences of that is Black Americans were insulated financially from it. The law of unintended consequences is me going to prison for drug addiction and theft and coming out wanting to change my life and change the world. Do you know what I mean? Which some of the white people there that put me there are probably not going to be happy about the things I speak up on in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't comment much on Arkansas because I just got off parole 2 weeks ago. And
Mm.
Sarah Huckabee
Oh,
Sanders
and congratulations about that,
Thank you.
by the way. Yeah, I saw your post earlier about being free.
I'm going to say this. I was a minority in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So on a very infinitesimally small scale, I understand what it's like to be a minority to a degree. But it's enough of a taste of it that I didn't like it. I think looking back, that had an effect on me also.
Mm-hmm.
It's sitting in a place of uncomfort.
You nailed it right there. Learning to be learning to be comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah.
I have a question about, I heard you say that you were a card carrying racist, that you were in the inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
Since I wasn't raised in that, and obviously Raquel wasn't raised in that, help us to understand being part of a culture. What is card carrying? You said there's a rule book. I have a hard time fathoming that. What does it mean?
There is peer pressure to be racist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to use an example. A white guy told me this a couple months ago that I met. He said that the week before, he'd been with 4 other buddies in a vehicle, and they were going out drinking, and they were all using the N-word. And one of them elbowed him, almost like, "Why aren't you using the word?" And he goes, "I didn't want to. It didn't feel right. I didn't want to taste it in my mouth." And he goes, "But I knew if I didn't, they would start harassing me, and that would turn into a fight with my buddies later." He goes, "I just knew it, so I said it to go along." And he goes, "And I regretted it." And the fact he was vulnerable with me about that is a whole other conversation. But that's so much peer pressure to think that way, right? Because and when I say card carrying, I mean, it's like literally you have a group of friends and you're all keeping each other in check. Like, as long as I know you're racist, I can make racist jokes.
Yeah.
You know, we can talk trash about other people because we're all in that. And there's certain codes we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that also apply to sexism?
Sexism, I tried to break this down. My racism didn't extend past Black Americans, right? So I grew up with a very strong father with values. Sexism is something I just guess it's not something I grew up with. I see it around me, but I don't understand it like I do racism, if that makes sense.
So if you were hanging out with your group and code of guys and you're like in the truck drinking the beer, and they no, like, let's say they were like, "Oh, look at that mama over there, I could get that." Would you jump onto that, or do you defend the woman?
That's guys. We're going to tell each other, "No, you ain't got a chance." You hit every branch of the ugly tree on the way. No, I don't ever talk about women like that. I don't get excited by. I'm wired differently, though. I'm a sapiosexual, meaning I'm only attracted to people that I'm intellectually attracted to. That's just the way. I saw in prison. I saw that a lot. I saw guys just go bananas for a woman walking by, a woman they would have never talked to in the world. I saw that. I don't participate. Guys that want to call the girl a B word, even in conversation, I'd ask them to stop. I don't like that. I don't like GD. I will straight up get in your face over GD.
Got it. So that wasn't part of your code in your book. And
my dad would have knocked the hell out of me if he'd have heard something like that come out of my mouth.
Okay. I want to take it back a little bit to the HBCUs, because there's over 100 of them. Which one did you start with on your journey? Which one are you ending with on your journey? And are you going to all of them?
Started with Wilberforce. Central State was second. Kentucky State was third. Simmons College of Kentucky in Louisville was number 4. I could go. Those are the first 4 in one weekend.
Okay.
Went to school, was not in session. I literally read up on all the schools a lot, and then I just wanted to walk the campus. But once at Wilberforce, I felt such energy about it, like a connection. Like I knew, looking back, I knew at that moment my life was changing. I knew that this was something I had to do, and I immediately said I want to go to all 101.
Yes.
I do not know what school is going to be last. I'm already at 31. This week, I'm going back to Philander Smith, and I'm going to see the presidents of Philander and Shorter. I believe they're both in town. I know of them. I'm going to go by Arkansas Baptist. I've already been to Pine Bluff. So there's 3. So that means I'm adding 1 to my list. And then I'm going to Langston 2 weeks from now in Oklahoma. So those are my next ones. My last one, It will not be Howard for last. I will not save them for last because everybody else would hate me for that. So and that's why I purposely also did not go to Howard in the beginning, is I didn't want to clout chase. I've had opportunities to go and I didn't because I didn't want people to think. Plus, many people messaged me when I started saying, please cover the smaller schools.
Yeah.
So I've really tried to focus on small schools.
Yeah. But you're eventually
And-
going to go to all of them.
Oh, that's I want to be the first white person to ever have gone to all of them.
Yes.
And you're walking to them?
No. I'm just crossing the country because I need to lose weight.
Ah, okay.
No, I
Okay.
do. Yeah, no, literally. I mean, this morning, my legs are fried. I walked 12 miles this morning, and my bicycle right here behind me.
Yeah. Nice
I
bike.
ride that when my legs give out. My knees start hurting to get my miles.
Wow.
I cannot walk 20 miles. I can walk 10 or 11 straight without stopping, no water. I know I need water, but yeah, I can just go without stopping once. I can go 10, 11 miles. But I got to get my knees a break before I do the afternoon session. So I can't walk in a straight line across the country because I'm by myself and I'm not camping out and it's not safe. So like Philadelphia, I walked a 15-mile loop around the city.
So you don't have a team coming with you? It's just you?
No. And I'm about to be in trouble. I'm like, my timing chain on my truck is going out.
Uh-oh.
And if I don't deal with it, it's very expensive and it's a big fix. Yeah, if I don't fix it and my motor goes wherever I am in the country, I'll stop my content, everything, because I have to find a job driving a truck. I'm homeless. I live in my pickup or hotels. I don't have an address anymore. I literally devoted my whole life to doing this.
You know, I don't think I realized that.
I didn't either. And you're doing it for 6 months. And then if your truck makes it, and then what are you going to do?
Well, I've been working on and I'm about to do this, is that I'm about to make a video asking for people to help, either not that, but I can get a used RV for probably 15 to 20 grand. And I've got 400,000, over 400,000 followers. So I want to see if I can raise that, because that would take care of my room and where I stay, my food choices, because I don't get to eat a lot of good food doing this, because where am I cooking stuff? So I'm going to see if I can raise that money. So to answer your question, when I'm done, I have a place to stay still. I'm going to continue touring, but I'm going to do something different. I want to create a mobile podcast. Instead of asking somebody to come to me, if I'm in Atlanta, I can just schedule, because my Rolodex is pretty impressive. Like, it blow your mind. And I want to start calling in these favors and going, hey, would you come sit in my RV or my trailer, have a real nice studio? But I want to use people with bigger names to build it. But who I want to focus on are civil rights veterans you've never heard of.
Nice.
Men and women who experience this, because their grandkids and kids and everybody else is going to be able to see someday what they went through in a more comfortable way. But if we don't record their history, I'm scared we're going to write them out of our history books.
Yeah,
and their experiences.
That's true. It's true.
I can put them on the internet for free for everybody. You cannot take it away.
So when you become famous, a famous podcaster making millions, I want you to remember Raquel and I in Madness Cafe.
Yes.
Don't forget about us
please
little
do,
guys.
sir. Yeah. Do not forget the little people.
I'm going to send you a neon light to put on your wall back there, Jennifer, of my silhouette. Says White George. White George is here. But listen,
That's funny.
But here's the thing, though. My overarching plot for life, when I know I've succeeded, is that I have no kids. I have no family. So I want to put 1,000 kids through HBCUs, full rides. That's about a $50 million proposition. And I know that money exists, but I want to take the money from white companies to invest in Black America this way. And I can do it at HBCUs, since HBCUs are open to all races, but I can dictate where that money goes like I want it to. But I would love to create a foundation that funds it in perpetuity. So everything I'm doing, the podcast, the connections, is all about creating relationships that I can leverage to get that money. Because when I die, I want to know I put 1,000 kids through college.
I know some top rich motherfuckers that could put a lot of people through college.
You know, and
we should eat them.
Yeah,
eat the rich.
Eat the rich. And you know, George, speaking of putting kids through school, I love that you've been saying on all your videos that, oh God, I'm gonna blank on the name of the college board, something, where you can, with one application, with one application, you apply to literally like
66 schools. 66 schools.
And that's awesome. And I don't think people think about that. Jennifer, I don't know if you remember, but when we were applying for schools, like,
It was all individual.
yeah, it
It
was
is-
all individual, and there's an application fee for everyone,
Yep.
and it was never cheap.
And it isn't like that anymore. My daughters both just applied for college, and it is, I forget what the app is called as well, but they just did one app. They did have to,
Nice.
depending on the schools, they might have to do more than one essay.
Mhm.
They both put a lot of effort into filling out scholarship forms. There are scholarships available for all kinds of things. You can get a scholarship because you're a vegan. You can get a scholarship because you have parents who are mixed race. You can have a scholarship because you have a parent who's in the military. You can have a scholarship because your parent banks at a credit union. There are all kinds of scholarships out there,
Oh my God.
ranging from like $500 all the way up.
But the thing is, though, is that there's so many kids in underserved communities
That don't know.
where the schools aren't great.
Yep.
Or
Agreed.
they are still good, but they don't have counselors who are telling them this
Agreed.
information.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
Agreed. This is why White George and what he's doing on TikTok is really important, because the young audience is actually on TikTok paying attention.
Yeah.
They are. And to be a TikTok, what do you call you? You're an influencer, and you're influencing a whole new generation of young people to, number one, see things differently than their parents did.
Mhm.
And number two, to know that these colleges can support them. And number three, that if we all support you, maybe you'll be supporting thousands of people. And also that we should eat the rich because they have too much fucking money.
Well, okay. Do you know how we could redistribute? We could redistribute, I don't know, $500 billion in 3 days in this country. If 50% of America, just 50% of us, would stop using Facebook and Amazon for 3 days, for just 3 days, their stock would plummet. Their revenues would plummet. The investors, or the big investors, would get out. Their advertisers, because your user base is so disillusioned, they boycotted you. You will literally bring those companies to their knees in 3 days. We don't want to be inconvenienced and not check our Facebook and not order some crap we don't need for 3 days. That's one of the ways we start to affect change. We're just not willing to.
I would do it if we got organized. Organize us. Organize us, White George. Get us organized.
I'm a storyteller, not an organizer. I'll tell the story after what happened.
Wow. And you are a very good storyteller, sir. Let me just go ahead and put that out there. Not that you didn't already know that.
I'm a very confident person, but I didn't know that I was a good storyteller. Like that never occurred to me. I wanted to be a motivational speaker, ironically. I just felt like I had a lot to tell, and I just didn't know how to go about it. And now speaking is ultimately where I want to go. That's where I can raise money. I understand the psychology of the parasocial relationship, right? How you view me, watching me. And that's a very powerful dynamic. So I'm very mindful of that. How I speak, I let mistakes stay in. If I stutter something, people are sick and tired of fake and plastic.
Yeah.
And with AI coming along, there's so much that's going to be AI content that us original organic storytellers, I think we're going to have an unprecedented run, because the art of storytelling is going to get lost with AI. And those who can still have that skill are going to become more valuable, I think.
Yeah.
How did you come across TikTok to begin with? Like what got you started and sparked on it?
Okay, I never had TikTok on my phone until October of 2022. And I remember I just started driving a dump truck. I got off the road in big trucks, driving a dump truck. I don't know who was talking about it, something about it. I'm like, you know what? I know a video that I do. I do a physics trick with Coke bottles and butane. I literally can make a Coke bottle disappear in front of your eyes. So I posted on TikTok and it went viral. Like 100,000 views right off the bat.
Your first video?
That was like my seventh. I did a couple with my ex. We put like the TENS unit on her face, and it made her smile. We hit the button. Like we might have eaten gummies. I can't remember, but you made her face go up. And we had a couple of goofy, but then I did the Coke bottle, and right off the bat, that was October. I think I only had like maybe 25,000 followers that May when I did that racism video. That video,
we have 500.
Yeah.
But I literally went from October to May. I might have gained, like I said, 20,000 followers. And I had videos, hundreds of thousands. But as soon as I did that one, I had 250,000 in 6 weeks later.
Wow.
Followers. That video alone got me 140,000 followers on TikTok.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Single video.
That is very cool. What you're doing is very provocative. And I'm sure you're like, ruffling some feathers. How are people generally? Well, of course, people are responding well, but I'm sure there's some people who maybe aren't so happy with what you're doing.
It's calmed down a lot.
How do you deal with that?
Well, for one, it's never face to face. Never.
Okay.
I think I carry a positive energy, so I'm not going to try to. Negative situations usually don't follow me around. But again, I'm almost 300 pounds.
I was going to say, you're also a big guy. They're going to be like, I was going to say something,
but never mind.
Yeah. And I'll never say that I'm a tough guy, but your doctor will let you know I was there when you wake up. I try to have that positive energy, but then I got facts over your feelings every time. You can't just what I'm telling you. You can't spin it, twist it, nothing. And I let the history speak for itself. Because I was a former racist, drug addict, ex-con, convicted felon times 10, I control my narrative because I put it all out there. I put all my mistakes out there because you now can't hold them against me. My ex at the time, when I first put that video up, she's like, don't do it. Please don't do this. Like she thought the hate was going to come. I'm like, I got to do it. It was a Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, and it just 1 million views in 11 hours. Wow. I got a video about to do 22 million on Instagram since the 1st of May. I'm about to have my first video with 1 million likes and 1 million shares. Like that's never happened. And Instagram doesn't pay a penny. So, but those things, I never realized people had a thirst for that. There's actually a website devoted to debunking every Black American inventor's invention. I'm not kidding. It's somewhere on one of my videos. It's a real website. The name explains it like, debunking Black invention. It's something very straightforward.com. And it literally, I found errors right off the bat in it. Like right off the bat, they're literally trying to make up stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's a website, a very detailed website.
Wow.
And people are trying to use that to say I was wrong. I'm like, and then I learned to be very clever and a little bit condescending when I want to bite someone's head off, and that works. Like, if you screw with me, I'm going to lean on you.
As you should.
Yeah.
And now that there's a lot of us white guys. There's more and more of us doing that now.
Yeah.
And I'm friends with all of them.
I have always felt when it came to racism, sexism, etc., that it really is the white men that have to step up, because it's the white men that are in the positions of power. And when George Floyd was murdered, my biggest complaint was that so many of my white American male friends had nothing to say. They were quiet, they disappeared, and I was so disappointed by that, because I felt that was the time to speak up. One of many times to speak up, but that was one. So thank you for speaking up. I know we have used up a whole hour already. What did you want to tell our audience that you haven't had the chance to?
Well, I was just going to say, just what you were just saying about the guys. I think during George Floyd and stuff, a lot of white guys didn't know how to react. Okay. Second, having been to prison, I have a different view than most of white guys. That violence hasn't hit their life. It hasn't come close to their life. Like I have a very close friend I grew up with who thought similar to me, but not nearly as bad. The girl he's with has a biracial kid, but he's proud. He loves that kid. But that has opened his eyes to a lot of things that he wasn't very open to. You know, kids have that ability to do that to you, right? When it came to BLM, I was one of those people, no, all lives matter, blue lives matter. I was one of those idiots because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't get it. And it took me a while, but it was a friend of mine who told me, he goes, man, let's say you have 4 adopted daughters, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. And he goes, let's say your little Asian daughter comes to you and goes, Daddy, do you love me? What are you going to tell your kid? Like, well, of course, baby. Of course I love you. He goes, you mean you don't tell your kid? Well, I love all my daughters. And I stopped to think about it. He goes, there's part of America that's hurting right now, and it's crying out, and they need us to love on them. That's all this is. This doesn't mean you don't get love. It just means one of your kids is hurting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm the asshole.
That was actually quite beautiful. It gave me a few tears.
But it changed my perspective. You know, I didn't understand about Michael Brown and Ferguson. I didn't get Trayvon Martin. Tamir Rice, I got right off the bat. But it took me a while with introspection and with experience and stuff. I'm like, and Sonia Massey pisses me off. I'm sorry. Do you have the time? I want to tell you my last idea. Then we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
So
Tell
I've got
us your
time.
idea.
Okay, we need a database for police misconduct.
Hell yes, we do.
Yes.
We knew
Hell
every
yes.
time
we
they get a
do.
disciplinary infraction, they get a
Hell yes,
warning,
we do.
brutality,
Yes.
job
Yep.
hopping.
All
We
of
need to
it.
put- In the hiring process, they need to put out the names for 30 days for public review so we can go check them out.
Mhm.
Because we're empowering them to have police and arrest powers over us, that we need to know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Job hop with it. We know.
You're correct. That, yes, 100%.
You know, Sean Grayson, her murderer, has been on 6 police departments in 4 years.
Yeah.
He had 2 DUIs at age 21 and 22, full convictions for. And you can't work for insurance companies with a DUI, but you can be a cop with 2.
You might be able to be a president in this country. Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
Yeah, there you go.
Listen, I stay out of politics, but the Republican nominee, that's just what I say.
Mhm.
The Republican nominee hasn't said anything of value. It's the greatest pandering P.T. and Barnum I've ever seen. When he goes, I'm a Christian. I love Christians. Christians love me. I love God.
Yes. Oh, you beautiful Christians.
But I would love him to hear a verse. I love God. I love going to church. Like, he never says anything. But his base has become so dumbed down that that's all they have to hear.
Speaking of politics, I saw your post where you talked about how, 7 years ago, you wrote something about Kamala Harris. Would you mind sharing that with us, please, sir?
Yeah, March 2017, I put on Facebook post to all my white friends, the first female president of this country will be, I said African American, will be a Black American woman. And all you racists, you just get through crying. That's the hardest thing for a woman and a Black woman to do in America is to get that, but it's coming, and it will be a Black woman, not a white woman. And here are my 3 choices: Kamala Harris, Oprah, because she has so much power, and then Condoleezza Rice, because she's one of the most brilliant women I think the world has ever. Despite her any politics or how you feel, she's brilliant.
She is brilliant, yeah. But
So,
yes.
But Kamala Harris is my first choice because you saw the writing on the wall.
Yes.
They're about to
Thank you,
tear her
George.
apart. They're about to. I don't know. You know, this is brilliant. I got a couple things to say. The whole icon, that's an iconic picture of Trump with the flag, right? It is patriotic, no matter how you feel. You know how fast that went away as soon as Joe stepped down and Kamala stepped up? Killed that story. Killed it. I didn't think you would kill it. I thought this dude was going to ride on waves of grain into the office. And it's like, oh shit, we're in a fight now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
a big fight.
Here's why you're in a fight. Hear it from my white face first. The most educated subset of Americans in this country are Black American women. They have to go get
Yes, we are.
PhDs when white women needed master's degrees, right? Or they get 2
Yep.
PhDs. They're some of the most educated group there is. Now, white women are the most powerful people in this country, not white men.
Mhm.
White women control their husband's money, their ex-husband's money, and their boyfriend's money. And white women are great at getting what they want from their men. I'm telling you right now, a lot of these men do exactly what their wife says or their girlfriend or their ex-wife, right? We know this. But women are so galvanized right now for Kamala Harris.
Yes,
And when
they
you put
are.
Black women and white women together, they're changing the world.
Yup.
That's literally half of our population. They are more vocal. We bring this together, the patriarchy starts to crumble.
Yeah, it does.
Crumble, crumble, crumble.
But if they will unite, as long as, because the right's going to find a way to fragment these two any way they can.
Of course.
Well, they're gonna
They-
try.
they will
it.
try.
We're gonna hear more about the trad wife and how women need to be good baby making machines for the
By the way,
patriarchy.
I met him the other day, Friday. Harrison Butker, the Chiefs kicker.
Oh, that guy?
Yeah, I took a picture with him.
I met
just to
that guy. I was like, who?
But, you know, the thing is, I was in the family area, like it's off limits to everybody. So there's not supposed to be autographs, but I watched him do everything every kid asked of him on his knees, blah, blah, blah. He treated the kids fantastic, and I knew who he was. And I was like, hey, dude, can I get a picture? Because my best friend won't believe it. So, yeah.
No, listen, a lot of the people who get caught up in Christian fundamentalist theory are not doing so because they're bad people. They're doing so because they believe in family. They want their kids to be protected, to go to the Holy Land. They want to keep them off drugs and off the street. And they think that they're doing a good thing. They just
They're
don't.
misguided.
They're misguided, and they're given a whole set of rules that their stomach might be telling them, no, don't do this. But all the people around them are saying, put on that jean jumper and be one of us. And they
Mhm.
want to be one of somebody.
Yeah. It's all about belonging
It's about belonging, and it's about
and about being safe.
thinking you can protect yourself and your family. That's what people think they're doing.
Mhm.
And there's some people that works for. And
Yeah.
good, you know, and if you find each other, man, that is fantastic. Happy for you if that works for you. I just, you know, he spoke up and he's willing to take the hate from what he did. I don't necessarily agree with the guy, but I was like, man, you got your convictions. I can respect that. And meeting him in person, it was extremely pleasant. Like, but yeah, like you said, he's a bad guy. He's just, and Christian fundamentalism. I grew up in a Baptist church and I shy further and further away from organized religion, just
Mhm.
further and further away. I have a strong belief in God. I mean, my faith is everything to me, but some of the people that wear the tag of Christian don't look like me. I mean, they don't
Yeah.
act like me, and we're not from the same.
It's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fundamentalism. It's the fundamentalism. It's the my religion over yours. Again, we're
Mhm.
right back to where we started. It's my group. Your group is somehow trying to hurt my group. I have to protect myself.
Yeah.
Instead
I
of
don't.
realizing that we're all the same freaking group. We're all humans.
Mhm.
But then we don't talk about racism in church
Right.
because that broke my heart when I realized I can't be a Christian and racist. That broke my heart
Mhm.
because I was living a lie.
Well, you know, you are trying to be a better person by overcoming your racism, and you're doing it every day, and you're trying to share the knowledge that you've gained, and you're trying to unite people, and you're trying to educate people. And for that, thank you. Thank you. And in whatever way you continue to do it, please do so, because there are people who will listen to you who won't necessarily listen to me or to
Or me.
Jennifer. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. You're welcome back anytime you want.
Ready to recap?
That was so thoroughly enjoyable
It was
talking
fun.
to George. And he has such positive energy to talk to somebody who is so open about their flaws, what they've overcome, what that did to them, and what they're doing now. It's a pretty
Okay.
huge thing. And you mentioned this just a little bit ago, and we've said this, you know, in other episodes, that the people in power have to be part of the messaging. They
mean-
have to help deliver the message too. It
But
can't just be from us.
I mean specifically white American males.
No, I know. And but that's what I'm saying is that for so many things, white men need to jump in and talk to white men, right? There are people who will hear it from George way easier and much more readily than they will from you and me.
Yes, because the way he described it as a card carrying racist, that you were in the inner circle. So if you're carrying the card, you got the rule book, you're in the inner circle.
Yeah.
And you've realized that what was in that rule book was not right. It's time to tell the rest of the club.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
time to
tell everybody else.
It's time to hold them accountable. It's time to say, hey, guys, I woke up. Time for you to wake up.
Yeah.
I know everybody hates that woke term, but
no, I love woke. So it's just that other people have fucked it up.
Hearing White George talk about growing up, really see little boys all over our country in their sweet lovingness, and then being taught to be strong and harsh and
hold their emotions in, and to be stoic and to be
a card carrying member of the club, to go along, to get along, to stifle what they know is right, and then to see someone in their, you know, whatever spiritual awakening that they have, which for White George, it was perhaps going to being held in prison and having conversations with people he wouldn't have otherwise met.
Yep.
And then saying, oh my gosh, I was wrong. I know that there are so many people out there who are having these awakenings, And like, yeah, you're the card carrying member. You guys have to do it, because I know Raquel and I are fabulous, but ain't nobody listening to us.
No, some people are listening to us, just
Not-
not 25,000 or however many hundreds of 400,000 people that
Yeah.
follow
Well,
George.
Our audience is amazing. They're
Yes,
awesome
our awesome
people.
is great.
They're
I mean,
amazing
our
people.
audience is great. Yeah.
But I'm talking about that group of card carrying white American racists. They're not really listening to us. Not yet.
No.
Maybe they'll watch White George on our show, and maybe they'll start listening to us. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. But it's just this really cool thing of you overcome something. You overcome something that's holding you back, and then your life just opens up.
Yeah.
You're removing that negative energy, and your heart opens up and your world opens up. And thankfully, George isn't keeping that to himself, right? He's going out and educating other people. He's like, everybody needs to know about this. This is great. He's literally going across country and reaching people probably around the world with all of this information. And I think that is fantastic. Our call to action: follow George, open yourself up to new information. That's the call to action. Open yourself up to new information. And second call to action: be brave enough to be vulnerable and listen. Have the conversation, ask the questions, and listen. It can change things that you maybe didn't even realize needed to change. Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.